Sarfield.
June 25th, regular meeting of the Amherst City Council come to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Goodell?
Here.
Mr. Van Turen?
Here.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Here.
Mr. Winarski?
Here.
Mr. Dembinski?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Present.
Mr. Janik?
Ms. Vasil.
I move that we excuse Mr. Jarrett tonight. He has a letter on file.
Mr. Dembinski.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to excuse Mr. Goodell from tonight's meeting. He has a letter on file. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? He is excused. We'll move on to 2 and 3 for the prayer by Chaplain Vasilk and remain standing for the pledge of the flag by Sergeant at Arms Dembinski.
Will you bow with me, please? Gracious God, bless this meeting tonight. Guide us, inspire us to be our very best at empathy and cooperation, and may we all act with integrity. Bless us all tonight, and may the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock, our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move on to item 4, the consent agenda.
Minutes of the regular council meeting held June 12, 2017. Minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held June 19, 2017.
Mr. Dembinski.
Move to accept the consent agenda as read.
Mr. Miller.
Second, please.
Motion is second on the floor to accept the consent agenda as read. Are there any comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Goodell?
Here.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
I know what he meant.
Consent agenda is accepted. Move on to item 5, acknowledgement of the public pertaining to items on tonight's agenda. Anyone wishing to speak on anything that is on tonight's agenda? If not, we'll move on to item 6, ordinances and resolutions. First reading, item A.
A resolution adopting the budget of the City of Amherst for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2018, submitting same to the county auditor and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Goodell.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend council rules so item 6A be passed on its first reading with the emergency.
Mr. Dembinski.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the floor to pass item A on the emergency. Are there any comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Winarski.
Motion to adopt.
Mr. Goodell.
Second.
Motion and a second on the floor to adopt. Roll call vote.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Motion carries.
It'll be Resolution R-1704.
Completes item 6. Move on to item 7, ordinances and resolutions, second reading. Item A.
An ordinance amending Amherst Codified Ordinance, Chapter 903.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to take 7A to the third reading.
Mr. Goodell.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to take item A onto the second reading. Are there any comments? The third reading, I'm sorry. Are there any comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item B.
An ordinance amending Amherst Codified Ordinance, Part 13, Building Code, Title I, Standards, establishing new standards by adopting a new Chapter 1301 and by amendments to Chapter 1303, 1305, 1307, 1309, 1311, 1313, and 1315.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to take 7B onto the third reading.
Mr. Goodell.
Second.
Motion second on the floor to take item B onto the third reading. Is there any comments? Roll Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Benarski?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item C,
An ordinance amending Amherst Codified Ordinance, Chapter 919.
Mr. Van Turen.
Move to take,
Go ahead.
The building inspector is proposing a couple amendments to this. I think he's here to speak about them, and I also, pretty confident he put those in your box to review, so maybe I could. let
Well,
the
we
building
can
inspector
get a
come up.
motion in a second, and then he can speak on it.
But you're gonna have to amend it
Yeah,
before, so if he makes a motion, I would rather he speak about it before
Okay,
making a motion to
okay,
amend it.
go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I appreciate you having me back. Chapter 919, at the last council meeting, there was an amendment that we had proposed. Unfortunately, copies of that amendment did not get to everybody, so we had postponed that amendment to the second reading for the on the floor. I trust that everybody's had a chance to read through it. Essentially, Chapter 91903 is specifically regarding street lighting. The original and current ordinance reads that street lighting essentially will be provided and maintained for the developments by the city of Amherst. That is not in practice the way that we do things. The way it works and the way that the language reads in the amended version of it is that the street lighting, the cost of the construction and the installation, supplying the street lighting is a function of the planning portion of the development. So the developer or property owner comes in, supplies all those materials. Once the development is approved and through both the planning commission and by council, then the maintenance of the street lighting is then taken over by the city and supplying of the electric. We felt it important to make that change so that we didn't have a developer come in and expect the city to supply and install the light in these projects. So if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to entertain those.
Any questions, anyone? Mr.
I guess a motion to send this to the third reading as amended.
You need to amend
We
it
need
first.
to amend it
Oh,
first.
motion to amend.
Mr. Goodell.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the floor to amend item C. Mr. Miller.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My apologies. Did you have another one, Dave? Maybe you want to talk about both of them. Can you lay?
Yeah, we can talk
Continue.
about both of them. Go ahead.
Thank you.
No problem. Saves me on your trip. Okay, I'm back. There's another amendment that we have to item D, which is specifically related to chapter 133704 and the building department fees. In 2013, we came and proposed some changes to our building department, to our residential fees that we charge for permits. And those were adopted by council, inserted into the ordinances, and everything is run as we always have since then. Question had recently come up with regards to our commercial fees. And doing a little bit of research, chapter 4104-7701 of the Ohio Administrative Code states that certified building departments can charge fees, and the fees for the construction documents that are submitted and inspections for those may be made by the certified building departments in accordance with their locally adopted codes or their locally adopted fees. We've always had that posted on our website. It was never actually a part of our ordinance. So what we've done is we've inserted our commercial fees as well as the residential fees. Nothing has changed as far as the fee structure goes or what we're charging. It's just that's now inserted actually into the ordinance so that we are fully in line with state laws. So that was the amendment to 133704.
Any questions? Mr. Dembinski?
Does it make sense to have
the fees actually outlined in here instead of just kind of referencing off to the other one?
I'm not sure that I follow.
Sorry, so when we're going over like the sidewalk stuff, we're actually just referencing the Ohio Revised.
Correct.
Do we actually pull these and these are in here explicitly, is that correct?
The fees are specifically in the ordinance. There's a spreadsheet with every fee that we charge.
Would it make more sense going forward to just reference the external ones so we're not duplicating them? So they don't have to worry about changing them?
There are no state fees for that. What we referenced in the amendment to the ordinance is that we are following the Ohio Administrative Code, that section. Our actual fee schedule has to be listed. There is no state.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
There is essentially no state. There is a state fee structure, but we don't. We charge our own fees because we're allowed to do that.
Okay, I understand. I was just thinking further down the line.
No,
Down the line from an
anything
administrative type
to
thing.
do to make things easier, if we have to make changes, I'm all for. And part of that is putting it in the format that we have it. If there's a need in the future to institute a new fee, to take one out, to increase or decrease the fees, it's easily done through the ordinance the way it's laid out.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
No problem.
And I
Mr. Mayor.
probably jumped the gun by having him come up. The first thing he talked about was for item C. The second
Right.
one he talked about was for item D. I thought they were both for C, so just to make that clear, both the next two items need to be amended.
Okay,
Thank you.
no questions, I guess, that's it.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller?
We have 7C already amended and passed. Is it okay to move 7C to the third reading then?
No,
We
no.
have a motion to amend and a second.
we have to
We didn't do a roll call?
We didn't have
We
roll
didn't,
call
we
on
didn't.
it.
So that's probably where we're at right now?
Yes,
Okay,
that's where
thank
we're
you.
at. And you are amending, and you wish to amend this as proposed by the building inspector and the law director and in the ordinance.
Exactly the words I was gonna use, yeah. Thank you.
Do you agree with that, Mr. Goodell?
Don't ask me to repeat it though.
There's a motion to amend item C on the floor as per the building inspector. All those in favor? A roll call vote, please.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Benarski?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Miller,
We'll take 7C to the third reading, please,
as amended.
as amended.
Thank you. Mr. Goodell?
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to take item C onto the third reading as amended. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mrs. Vasilk? Mr. Benarski?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item D,
An ordinance amending Amherst Codified Ordinances, Chapters 1331, 1336, and 1337.
Mr. Miller.
Move to amend as stated 7D.
Ms. Vasil?
On second.
Motion is second on the floor to amend item D as per the building inspector's request. Any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Benarski?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Winarski.
Motion to send it to the third reading.
Mr. Dembinski.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to send item D onto the third reading as amended. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Benarski?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
That completes item 7. Move on to item 8, ordinances and resolutions, third reading. We have none. Move on to item 9, miscellaneous and acknowledgement of the public. Anyone here wishing to speak on any item? Mr. Molnar, if you go to the podium, please.
Thank you very much for having me here and letting me speak.
Mr. State his name and
Yeah.
address.
We need your name and address, sir.
Okay, my name is Joseph Molnar. I live on I-99 Jackson Street, and it's, of course, Amherst. I had 3 issues to bring to the table. One of them was basically the utility trucks
always parking in front of the utility building during peak hours that a lot of customers are coming in. I had witnessed an elderly lady one time happened to walk from the back parking lot. Several emails were sent back and forth between Jennifer and myself. Basically I wasn't seeing any results done, you know, through the final email, I guess, and I finally got to see the trucks parking towards the back of the parking lot. So I want to thank whoever was involved with that, making that happen, and just keeping that front parking lot in front of the building free for the customers. You know, so I just want to thank you for, you know, everybody involved with that, and that issue has been resolved in my eyes.
What building was that?
The water department, utilities. I would always see the water trucks parked there, 3, 4 trucks, you know, early morning. A lot of times I have to go there and pay my bill, you know, and I don't mind walking the distance, but at one point I did see an elderly lady, you know, walking the distance when the parking lot should have been free and clear in that front.
Springsteen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So this morning I actually drove by and seen the trucks parked in the back. So thank you very much. Hope that remains that way. You know, that keeping that front area clear. Second issue is basically I had a problem with my water lines inside the house, where I have 2 bathrooms and I don't use one. So over the months, my one toilet basically was running and created a large bill. And when I seen that, over $300, I was like, what the heck? So, talking with the water department, they said, check this, checked it, sure enough, found the problem. I had the other one also go bad on me, and I only used one. So, it was basically, after I had this large bill, I was told that, you know, the water department has a payment plan, you know, basically that large bill can be spread out evenly. So I said, okay, no problem. My fault with the water. I'm agreeing to pay the whatever bill it was. So when I came in and signed the contract with the water department, really wasn't explained in detail the whole the contract, the way it was written. It just says pay whatever the amount was agreed upon, plus current bill, and at the end, if there's any balance due, there would be penalties applied to your bill. Well, that's what I understood as basically it was. So the contract that I have written here, and I do have a copy of this, was 101.31, and then whatever my current bill was. So to me, current bill is what I would normally pay prior to any penalty, late fees. So I had the dates all set up, January through March, paid each one as it was in the contract here. And then when I paid that final bill, they said, well, you still owe approximately, I think it was like $40 to $50 more for the arrears. And I said, well, that was never brought to me or my attention throughout each month. So I basically tried to argue back and forth that, you know, the contract way it was written was too vague, and basically requesting a refund. Emails back and forth, mayor's office finally contacted me and says, it stands, you would still owe it. So I just basically chalked it up as a loss. And even though, like I said, you know, for me, I'm working 2 jobs, I have a house payment, it's just myself, $40, $50 is a lot of money. To Amherst, I thought, okay, it's just gonna be a split bucket, nothing there. We basically didn't win anything. So at this point, I am requesting that the contract be rewritten. I do have basically my own version of what I am requesting. I have it highlighted, and I'm just basically at this point requesting the contract be rewritten for anybody that may come into the same scenario that I have been, that they're not gonna lose out or not understand clearly when it should have been explained a little bit more detail, on what it was about. So, I don't know.
No, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Okay. This is from the way it was written, how everything was.
Okay.
This is what I wrote in the only thing I'm changing is basically,
I see,
adding,
so that's it. Well, we'll consider it. We looked at this when I was safety service director and wanted to make sure that it was clear, and we actually bolded and underlined the section that says penalty, and it's about a twice the size font as the rest of the contract. It says penalties will be applied to the unpaid balance. You know, unpaid balance is, so we might try to clarify that a little more. I don't know about this language. We'll look at it and consider it. We do training often on how to tell customers
and I mean,
on
you know,
this.
just the way it was written, yes, I did see that, the penalties, and here I thought it would be applied to, you know, I would have a zero balance on my account, additional penalties would be applied at that
I'll work
point.
with the law department, decide if we need to change some language.
And I appreciate it, just, you know.
Can I keep both these?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And, it just, if somebody can get back with me, either through email or something like that, on final decision of whether or not this was accepted or not, you know, within the council, and,
And then the one thing I see about you said, it said at the end of the 3-month agreement, each month you're in arrears, there will still be a penalty applied to any unpaid balance, so we can't wait to the end of the 3-month period. Anything that's still due on your bill is an unpaid balance.
okay.
You know, it's the way the policy works.
I mean, just, you
So
know.
I'll try to come up with better language and then get back to you.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you. And then the final issue that I have to bring to the table is basically, you know, I don't know who to contact. I don't want to be contacting Amherst Police Department every single day. I know speeding is an issue in many of the streets within Amherst, and Jackson Street is basically, ever since the bridge reopened, it's become a speedway. And I know that the police department cannot, you know, monitor every single street in the city, but I'm basically requesting, you know, either more surveillance or, you know, the neon sign that, you know, tracks your speed limit when you're going through there, because many, almost daily, I see, you know, cars just speed right through there. And that's mainly, I think, mainly between Elyria and Jackson Street Bridge. Just because I live in that area, so I don't know if I need to text Amherst Police Department every time I see somebody speeding down there. I don't want to be that much of a burden, but I mean, it just, the only time I see a lot of times the police down there is if there's a lot of residents in the area with the drug problems. And so I mean, they're there, but I don't see I think I only see maybe the police department issue one ticket that I'm aware of. You know, and I'm sure there's more. It just, you know, I'm not there 24/7 to see that. So I don't know how I would go about or how that can occur with trying to get more surveillance on that street. And I know that somebody on Facebook basically had the comment about the speed limits on several streets. And I know Jackson Street was one of the hot ones, you know, on that.
I can make it aware to the police department that somebody was at council, and we'll just pass your information on to them.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Questions?
Morrow. We have, you know, speeding is a problem all over town, and you know, when the police sit on one street for a while, it slows down. Then they go to another street and it speeds back up. It's
Right.
just a common problem we have in town. We've had it for years, and you just can't be there, you know, all in one place. So I sympathize with you. My street's the same way, but you just can't. I mean,
Right, well, I understand that.
You know.
yes.
so, Mr.
We rarely get residents come in and talk to us about their concerns and give us praises for the ways that the city's rectified some of their concerns. I wanted to thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
You're articulate, you're polite, the way you present these to us. Most of it is administrative stuff and not necessarily legislative, but I wanted to say thanks. I really appreciate it. I wish more people would come in and take an interest and let us know what was going on like this.
Yeah, I mean, for me to be here, it'd be a lot, because I don't know if anybody knew my mother, Ann Molnar.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Lorraine.
Basically, she
Yeah.
knew how I felt about politics, I'm sorry. She always tried to get me to see her council meetings, I goes, nope, ain't getting me there.
Not a lot of politics in here. We're just
Right.
hoping to do a good job for you. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dembski?
Thank you. Actually, I also want to thank you, not only for being here, but also you provided a potential solution. A lot of times in the public, or just in general, people like to vent and complain and whatnot, but you've actually gone and put in the effort to say, here's something I think we should make it better. So that's in their hands, and they'll do a good job of it, but just want to say thank you actually for putting that
I
out.
appreciate that comments, thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Miller?
Thank you. I second those comments as well, but I just want to add, if there is an issue for anybody that's thinking about some of the ways that they can get resolution, I know the mayoral's office has been very open to helping solve. So our administration is working. When we go in there with a problem, they're going to work hard. And if they don't find a solution, this is definitely the place to come. But I hope you give our mayor an opportunity to solve those problems, and that would be the police under him, the utilities under him. That's all on the administrative side, and he's very proactive. So I think you'll hopefully get a solution, but if it's something that you feel is not working, then please, you and anybody else that has an issue, please feel free to come in here and speak with any of us, either out on the floor or even contact us, and we're all on the website. But I did want to add to that, for the police issues, if there's drug issues, which I drive down Jackson Street quite often, and there were some kids and there was some drug activity going down a couple of years ago, and I call, they're extremely responsive. You can text them at 988-4422 and just text in, and I highly recommend that. They're extremely responsive. Dispatchers always get back to me when I shoot. I use that as well. A lot of times I'll just shoot the text in and say, hey.
If I had that number on my phone.
Yes, and I think everybody should. It's an excellent service, and our police chief does a good job of training our officers to be very responsive. So thank you for coming in, and I just wanted to get that text number out there, and I also want to say that we thank the mayor for constantly trying to find solutions to these type of problems.
Okay.
I yield the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Muller. We appreciate you coming in, honestly. Let's see, we have item A and B, consideration of two liquor licenses. One is a transfer, I believe. Are there any comments on these two? Mr. Mayor?
There were some concerns brought up last meeting that these were talked about, and those turned out not to be concerns.
Okay,
Do you agree?
I agree, yeah.
okay.
My
Thank-
memory had to do more with the location. I remember there being an issue with that particular location, but the fact that it's being transferred to the new ownership is welcome news in our office.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? If not, we'll move on to item 10, agenda requests and committee meeting schedules.
You have to appoint someone too.
Oh, yes.
Forget.
Yes, there seems to be a vacancy on the Design Review Board by Mr. Bukovac, who got hired by the city. So I think Mr. Winarski requested to go back on it, did you not?
Yes.
That's too bad, I mean. So anyway, we'd like to appoint Mr. Winarski to the Design Review Board. So with that,
Does it need to be voted on or anything, or
no.
just mention?
I think the ordinance says appointed by the mayor and approved by council, so that might need a vote.
I would take a roll call vote on it.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Ms. Vasil?
I move that we accept the nomination of Mr. Winarski by the mayor for the design review board position.
bad, Chuck, there's no second. Mr. Dembinski.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second on the floor to consider the appointment of Mr. Mr. Winarski to the Design Review Board. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now we'll move on to
Did you
item.
vote for yourself, too?
Did you vote for yourself?
Did you vote for yourself?
Of course I did.
Mr. Miller?
Thank you. This just brought up something that I think maybe we should discuss in a future, either committee or future meeting, but I think as we have new members on council and we have some questions as to who appoints and who actually votes on and those type of things, it wouldn't be a bad idea for us to do a quick education on appointments and assignments both on council and both by the mayor, so the public and our council itself would come to understand how members of council will end up on design review or any of the other committees or commissions that are placed within the city's responsibility, whether it be through the administration side or the legislative side. So just something to think about. Maybe we can discuss that future in the next meeting or two.
Okay, we can do that.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Let's move on to item 10, agenda requests and committee meeting schedules.
I have only one item, Mr. President. A 1734 to Finance, reappropriate funds for various accounts in the fire department. And that's all, Mr. President.
Thank you. Finance, Ms. Purcell.
Yes, I have one item as read by the corporate council, and I'd like to call that meeting for the 10th of July at 6:45.
July 10th at 6:45. Thank you, Ms. Purcell.
That's complete, Mr. President.
Building and Lands, Mr. Van Turen.
Excuse me, Mr. President. Mr. Mayor, there's a
Yeah,
JED public hearing
there's already a
scheduled
public
at
hearing that
6:30,
day.
so how much time do you think you'd need for that public hearing?
I can't believe a lot, but, we could, it's scheduled at 6:30.
6:30.
There might be some discussion on that.
So,
Mine will follow.
6:55, say, okay,
thank you.
sorry.
Okay. Building and Lands, Mr. Van Turen.
No items. No
Thank you.
items, Mr. President, please cancel.
Streets, Mr. Dembinski.
No items, Mr. President, please cancel.
Thank you. Community Development, Mr. Goodell.
Nothing at this time, Mr. President. Please cancel.
Thank you. Executive, Mr. Van Turen.
No items, please cancel.
Thank you. Ordinance, Mr. Miller.
No items, Mr. President, please cancel.
Thank you. Utilities, Mr. Van Turen.
No items, please cancel.
Thank you. Recycle, Mr. Miller.
Keep recycling, no items.
Technology, Mr. Dembinski.
No items, Mr. President, please cancel.
Thank you. Police and Fire, Mr. Winarski.
Nothing at this time, Mr. President.
As far as recycling goes, I think it should be brought up that Allied Waste has changed all the schedules in Amherst. Is that right?
Everybody's on Wednesday now.
Yeah. So, just so everybody is
So all
aware of that.
everything, your bulk pickup, your yard refuse, everything.
Thank you.
I had a question, did that include businesses? I assumed it did, but someone asked me today if it included businesses.
I don't know.
I
I'm
thought
I
they
think
assuming.
were
your
contract.
dumpster schedule's probably.
They're on their own
the same.
contract.
Okay.
I can
Alright.
find out.
Completes item 10. Move on to item 11, reports administration.
Thank you. Mr. Kukuka?
Thank you, no report this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Ramsey?
I have no reporting this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Pecora?
Just I'd ask council to convene an executive session to discuss the pending legal matter, pending litigation.
Thank you. Mr. Jeffries?
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Just want to thank council for supporting my appointment to the Design Review Board. It's a very important position, and it does a lot for our downtown, so thanks for confirming that. Also want to talk real briefly about the sidewalk program. The ordinance that you're changing is going to help with the assessment of our sidewalks and getting those things fixed. We're very close to the end of assessing every sidewalk in the city. We've had some employees go out, we've had some, the engineers have gone out, so we're almost close to assessing them all. So we're still on track to get letters out mid to end of July, letting people know that they've had their sidewalks looked at and there's possibly problems. There have been some permits pulled, so some people are voluntarily fixing sidewalks at this point. Not a lot, but they're starting. And we've actually talked into some different contractors that do different things other than just pour new concrete. We've looked at some people that are able to grind areas that are a little high. We've talked to some that are able to pump up the concrete to make it more, bring it up to level. So we're looking at alternative solutions too. So we're on track. It's a big job, but thank you for getting the ordinance changed in the next couple readings. That's going to help tremendously. In the report.
Okay, thank you. On that same item, I would like to make mention that if anybody doesn't want their sandstone sidewalks, the Amherst Historical Society will gladly accept them. Just call them and they will pick it up. They have a forklift. They can come and load it up. And if you're not going to use them or you're going to get rid of them, I would be happy to take them. So, thank you. Mr. Dembinski.
I'll move to accept the reports of the administration.
Mr. Winarski.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to accept the reports of administration. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, reports are accepted. Mr. Dembinski.
Move to executive session to discuss pending litigation.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to adjourn or recess council to go into executive session at 7:38. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Dembinski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Motion carries. We'll recess into executive session. You always all have to leave.